If I said to you the word imprecatory, would you know what I was talking about? If you're a theologian, you probably do. Imprecatory is a fancy word. Somewhere along the line in Christianity, they came up with the word imprecatory to talk about a certain sect of Psalms that are in this book of Psalms. And imprecatory, if you read the imprecatory Psalms, you may not know what imprecatory means, but a working definition of imprecatory is ticked off. That's what it means. The writer is angry, and he's usually angry not at God. Sometimes he is in the imprecatory Psalms, but most of the time they're angry at somebody else. And in Psalm 17, David is angry. He's upset. He's going to God because he's angry about the situation he finds himself in. And the situation he found himself in is that he followed God his entire life. As a shepherd boy, God was with him, fending off wild animals. And as a warrior, God was with him when he defeated Goliath. And as an aide to the king, God was with him when he gave the king some solace and some peace and de-stressed him by playing the harp and singing songs to the king. And now, after all that obedience to God, he now finds himself hiding from the very king God led him to serve, Saul. And he is imprecatoried. Very, very imprecatoried. And so in Psalm 17, it's about what do we do as people who follow Jesus when we are imprecatoried ourselves. When we're angry, when we feel unjustly persecuted by enemies, what do we do? I want to call your attention to something we all can relate to as people who live in this country. Here's a slide. I don't even have to explain it. Here's another one of the same event. That was a heartbreaking day. I bet if we took a moment, each one of you could tell me where you were when you first saw or heard this happen. I remember it vividly. My daughter was very, very young, less than 4 years old, and she remembers that day because it was so profound. And so you and I don't need to think about rage much when we watch that. Did you know that an essay written shortly after this event won national honors all through the nation? And the essay was called "The Case for Rage and Retribution." In it, the essayist wrote, "We shouldn't feel better. For once, let us have no rhetoric about healing. Healing is inappropriate now. For once, let us have no grief counselors. We shouldn't feel better. Healing is inappropriate now and dangerous. There will be a time later for tears of sorrow. A day cannot live in infamy without the nourishment of rage. Let's have rage." Now, probably his words spoke to the heart of a lot of people in America. We were unfairly, unjustly attacked on 9/11. Not only in New York City, but in the heartland of Pennsylvania, down in Washington, D.C. as well, we suffered a great loss, a great wound. And there was probably in every breast of every red-blooded American rage over what happened. Folks, can I tell you that you don't have to be bombed by terrorists to have rage? Enemies that you and I face right now, people that will do us harm, we can have rage over. Now, I'm not telling you it's okay to have rage. I'm admitting to you that humanly speaking, we have rage in us. David had rage. We're going to read parts of this psalm. It's not very long. But there's parts of this psalm where David says, "Get them! Sick them, Lord! Get them back for this!" And I want you to know, you never see God rebuking him for this. But David doesn't stay there. The essayist says there's going to be a time for healing, but it's not right now. I don't know if I totally agree with that. I think you can let rage consume you, and that's not a good thing. But certainly, as Christians, we can't get religious and say, "Oh, I never get angry." That's ridiculous. If you're human and your heart still beats blood and you still breathe and your brain is functioning, you're going to get angry at some point. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to be at a place where you don't like a certain individual or a certain thing that's happening. And there's going to be boiling in you the human instinct to rage. Now, some of you rage better than others. And so we don't all rage to the same degree or the same level. I am married to a woman who lets me know when she's angry by saying to me, I'm really angry. And I'll say, I'm glad you told me, because I wouldn't have figured that out. You know, you were just quiet. I just thought maybe you didn't want to speak. No, I learned early on in our marriage, when she doesn't talk, I'm in trouble. So sometimes we know when people are upset. And sometimes some people rage out loud and we can see it, and sometimes they don't. Here's what we can all do. Here's what we're taught in this psalm. When we're upset, we have a resource. We have recourse. And what we see here is David, in his rage, in his anger, in his hurt, pouring his life out, his feelings out to God. And God listens to him. Psalm 17 encourages us to cry out to God in our struggles, trusting him to defend us against those who have hurt us without any cause. And that will happen to you. Sometimes you don't have to stand up for Jesus to have that happen. People just take it out on you. Sometimes it's because of our faith. And when attacked by enemies, the remedy for the follower of Jesus is to go directly to him. And that's exactly what we see here. I think you're going to enjoy how you see David go through this trial. I know I did. When I was studying for this and looking through this psalm, it was amazing to see how human David was and how I identified with him in many places as I read this psalm. The first thing David says is, Lord, this is unfair, so vindicate me. Vindicate me. Show them that I'm not the person they think I am. He went to Saul more than once and said, Saul, I got nothing against you. And Saul hurled spears at him and chased him all over Tarnation to try to kill him. Even when he had opportunities to kill Saul, he would say, why, my king, are you doing this? And finally he cries out to God, vindicate me, Father. You know this is wrong. I had nothing to do with why Saul's upset. I didn't do anything to him other than serve him as faithfully as I could. Vindicate me, he says. Oh Lord, hear my plea for justice. Listen to my cry for help. Pay attention to my prayer, for it comes from honest lips. Declare me innocent, for you see those who do right. You have tested my thoughts and examined my heart in the night. You have scrutinized me and found nothing wrong. I am determined not to sin in what I say. I followed your commands, which keep me from following cruel and evil people. My steps have stayed on your path. I have not wavered from following you. Something I want you to understand. I know it's a little abstract. I know it's a little bit esoteric, but hear me now, because this is really helpful. I found it very helpful. David did this, and I would ask you to model this. The more real and honest you are with God in prayer, the greater peace we will have. When you try to mask to God, I'm not really angry, God, but I'm not really, and when you try to go to him and try to be religious, you don't come away with any feeling of any peace, of any rest in this situation at all. As soon as you say amen, probably what happens is you go back over the same tapes again and you get angry and hurt all over again. When you're able to be real in your emotions with God. Now, some of us were taught when you go to God, you have to speak a certain way. Up until I was in my mid-teens, whenever I prayed to God, I all of a sudden spoke King James English. Hath, this, thou, wherefore. I didn't even know what they meant. I just said it because I thought that's what God understood. It was later on where God said, Dean, I can understand plain English. It's all right. You can talk normal to me. I already know what you're going to say. It's okay, dude. So just be real. When I was honest with him, God and I had a new understanding. I was able to say, God, I'm ticked off because I know. What are you going to do about that? I said, well, here's what I want to do. And as we see, David goes through that. Here's what I want to do. But then David doesn't stop there. There's a final step we'll get to. God knew that David's prayer was sincere and that his life, though not sinless, was blameless. Now, this is important to understand. You and I are going to blow it. So you can't go to God saying, God, I'm perfect. But you can go to God and say, God, I've been forgiven. And if there's anything going on right now, please forgive me. And you know, in this particular situation with this particular person, I did nothing to cause this to happen. I'm blameless in this. And you can cry out to God for that. A ministry called Open Doors, some of you may know who that is. They put Bibles into communist countries back in the day. They now go into Muslim areas and try to preach about God or speak about God, unbeknownst to the government there. They did a survey from 22 to 23, 2023 to 2023, 2 years. And in that 2-year span, they found that 4,125 Christians were detained without trial, arrested, sentenced, and imprisoned. 3,906 believers were abducted. More than 3,200 Christians were raped, sexually harassed, or forced to marry non-Christians. 42,849 followers of Jesus were physically or mentally abused. Nearly 300,000 Christians were forced to leave their homes, go into hiding, or flee their country of origin. They estimate that on a scale, an average of 13 Christians a day are killed for their faith. And many they had heard about or were told about later on, many who were killed went to their deaths in faith, praising God at that moment of their death. Where does that come from? Where does all the rage and anger for being persecuted go when you're about to lose your life? How did this happen? Well, as always, we turn back to God, and His Word is there to serve us. And as Christians following Jesus, here's what we hear. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So what do we do with our rage and our anger? We have it, we just don't act on it. We allow God to do that. We don't declare ourselves morally perfect or free from sin, but we proclaim innocence in the light of our enemy's accusations. And then we can let God handle the situation from there. And if you don't think that's difficult, talk to somebody who's done that. It's really, really difficult because you can't help yourself. You get in a conversation with somebody who hurt you and you can barely get words out that don't sting them, because you're angry and raging at them. And over time, when we ask God to give us the ability to let Him have it, what do we find? We find peace and rest. David says, vindicate me. Then he continues. He says, God, you need to protect me. I don't want this to happen to me anymore. Stop this. Would you get this to knock off? I don't want to do this anymore. Now, we don't know God's plan for us. We know God's plan for David because we're looking in hindsight. David didn't. David didn't know that eventually it was going to come to an end. Probably in that cave when he was hiding with his men and they were starving, trying to find food without getting told by other people, say, hey, Saul's on his way, or them going and telling Saul where they're at. Probably they didn't feel like God was going to protect them. But David prayed. He said, I'm praying to you because I know you will answer, O God. Get this verse. I know you will answer, David said. I want to tell you, when you're in the throes of great pain and anger, when someone's after you, it's hard to know that God hears and God answers. You may have doubt. As a human, that makes sense. And David probably did too. But he got to the point where he said, I know you will answer. Bend down and listen as I pray. Show me your unfailing love in wonderful ways. By your mighty power, you rescue those who seek refuge from their enemies. Guard me as you would guard your own eyes. Hide me in the shadow of your wings. Protect me from wicked people who attack me, from murderous enemies who surround me. They're without pity. Listen to their boasting. They track me down and surround me, watching for the chance to throw me to the ground. They are like hungry lions, eager to tear me apart, like young lions hiding in ambush. Don't you love it that David didn't spare anything here? He said, God, this is how bad things are, in case you haven't noticed. They're coming after me, and they ain't happy about it. And when they get me, it's not going to be a good time. Let me explain to you the situation. God never says, hey, David, I already know. He goes, okay, bring it. Tell me. Pour it out. It's okay, son. It's okay, daughter. Let me hear what you say. Let me know what's in your heart. I already know it, but when you tell me, you can receive my peace. As long as you hold it in, it's going to block any peace that you can get from me. We are to proclaim in faith that we know for sure God will answer. When we go to God in prayer, all we have to do is look at the cross and ask, God, do you love me? And then the cross will answer that in the loudest voice possible in the entire world. Absolutely. To this depth of love, I love you. As we are careful to shield our own eyes from danger, so God shields us. You ever thought about how great eyelids are? How fast they are? I was in a restaurant with somebody just this week. We were having breakfast, and it's a great place, but they have a fly problem, apparently. And we were sitting there eating, and the flies were enjoying breakfast too, apparently, because they were all over us. And they were mean flies. You know, they weren't just, hey, can I have something? They were, I want it now. And they were coming right after us. And one flew right into my friend's eye, and it was kind of funny to watch him go, ah, like that, until it happened to me. And then I was like, and I noticed how quick our eyelashes and our eyelids were able to stop. Have you noticed that? You don't even think about it. It's instinctive, right? It's a reflex. Something comes near your eye, and immediately your lid shuts. Folks, that is what David is comparing God's protection to. Just as you have protected our eyes, you're going to protect me. We are careful to shield our own eyes from danger, so God shields us. In another psalm, the writer writes, have mercy on me, O God, have mercy, for I look to you for protection. I will hide beneath the shadow of your wings until the danger passes by. These are two word pictures, both in Psalm 17 and 57, about the same thing, about how a mother hen will hide the chicks under her wings and how God does the same to us. God also protects us by guiding us through painful circumstances. Notice we're not praising him for taking them away, because he allows them to happen from time to time in the life of a follower of Jesus. God has a purpose. We don't always know what that purpose is, but we do know that God doesn't save us from every problem and every persecution. But he helps us through by helping us escape them and then grow stronger. Many of you know who Martin Luther is. He's the father of the Protestant Reformation. He was a Catholic priest. His dad did not want Martin Luther to be a priest. And so he was pretty upset. He wanted Martin Luther to be a lawyer. Martin Luther was really smart. And his dad told him, you need to become a lawyer, get rich so you can take care of your mother and I in our old age. And when he became a Catholic priest, his dad was pretty ticked off. On the day that Martin Luther was able to lead Mass, and that's a big deal in the life of a monk, the first time you can lead Mass. After dinner, they were having dinner in the fellowship hall afterwards, just like we do. And they were eating, and Martin Luther said, well, Dad, what do you think? And his dad rebuked him in front of everybody. But Martin Luther became a Catholic monk. And then one day, Martin Luther realized that what was being taught by the Catholic Church was wrong. And he had the guts to stand up to the Pope, who had the ability to strip Martin Luther of everything and consign him to either prison or to life as a pauper. They brought him to a city called Worms. It would be Worms in English, but we call it Worms. And they had him stand there, and they tested him. And at the end of this lecture to him, this is what he says. Unless I am convinced by the testimony of Scriptures and by clear reason, my conscience is captive to the Word of God. I will not recant anything. For to go against conscience is neither right nor safe. Here I stand. I can do no other. God help me. Folks, when you and I are persecuted, when you and I have enemies coming to us, you and I need to know something. Sometimes God wants us to stand there. and to rely on his word. Don't try to get people back. Don't try to avenge ourselves. Let him do it. And that is as difficult as anything I know to do. If you think that's easy, try it. It's very difficult. Jesus said this, and this is mind-blowingly crazy. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. It's like we have to read that several times to understand, are you really saying that? Praying for my enemy. God's protection, though, has greater purposes than helping us avoid pain. It's to make us better servants for him. Sometimes when our enemies are against us and it's totally unfair and we need to be vindicated, sometimes God lets us stay there for a moment to do something more miraculous in us and for us and to us. Jesus says this after he says, love your enemies. In that way, you will be acting as the true children of your Father in heaven. For he gives his sunlight to both evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even pagans do that. But you are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. In Luke, Jesus tells us our reward will be great if we love our enemies. David did not have the New Testament, but he had God in the Old Testament. He had God speaking to him. He had God hearing him. And David understood this, that God had him here for a purpose. But that didn't stop David from being real to God and asking God to do something. Here's what David says. Here's what his requests are for God to interact with his enemies. He says, "O Lord, stand against them. Bring them to their knees. Rescue me from the wicked with your sword. By the power of your hand, O Lord, destroy those who look to this world for their reward, but satisfy the hunger for your treasured ones. May their children have plenty, leaving an inheritance for their descendants. Because I am righteous, not because of what he's done, because who Jesus or God was to him, I see you. And when I awake, I will see you face to face and be satisfied." David is teaching us a lesson. God is teaching us a lesson through David's life. And that is, you can rage, you can be upset, you can feel unjustly persecuted, and you are. And you can ask me to destroy them, to bring them to their knees, to annihilate them totally. And I will listen. But in the end, you have to follow me. And that's what David says in verse 15 of Psalm 17. He says, I will see you. When I awake, I will see you face to face and be satisfied. I'll let you handle it, Father. Thank you for letting me rage. Thank you for letting me wish evil upon them. But in the end, I'll let you do it. A seminary professor relates his story of his mom who had dementia. And it took her about 12 years to finally succumb to it and pass away. And it was heartbreaking. Every time he saw her, it was a little worse. And finally, near the end, she could barely make it down the hallway in her walker. And he finally, the last few words she could say before she finally passed away was, Father, don't let me fall. Father, don't let me fall. And the seminary professor said, at first I thought she was doing that out of anxiety because she didn't want to fall. But before she died, I was with her again one time, and she was saying that over and over again, and it finally occurred to me. She wasn't saying that out of anxiety. She was saying that out of faith because she understood that God was going to catch her and bring her to himself. You know, he said one of the things about dementia is people lose their filter, and what they think inside their head now comes out of their mouth, and there's no filter anymore. And he said it was a blessing to me, her son, to hear my mom, Her last words were a prayer to her father that he was going to protect her, that he was going to rescue her, that he was going to vindicate her. God is storing up judgment. Make no mistake, God is storing up judgment for our enemies. And their only reward will be in this life, not in the afterlife. Jesus told us that. David praised that in the last part of Psalm 17, that they do everything they can for this life. They have no knowledge of what comes. Folks, when you and I will allow ourselves to rest in Jesus and sleep on it in peace, we can wake up and be satisfied because God is with us right now. What David was talking about at the end of Psalm 17 wasn't just heaven. He was talking about life here and now as well. Jesus called out to God in his hour of need, showing us a perfect example of faith in the Father while under trial. Do you remember some of the last words? What? Father, forgive them. And then he said, Father, into your hands I come. Seeing God's face, when the Bible tells us that, that's an equivalent to receiving blessings from him right now and forever. When you and I can work through our rage, when we can work through our need for vengeance, when we can work through our need to be shown to be innocent, when we can let all that rest with God, we receive the blessing of peace right now in the midst of great pain. Our stress level goes down, sleep returns to us, our appetite comes back, we're nice to be around, we're not as short with people, we're not angry all the time. Our cholesterol improves, our blood pressure goes down, our bowling score goes up, whatever. You know, it's good stuff. Well, take this with you. When our enemies come against us, they seem strong and powerful. They overwhelm us sometimes. There's nothing we can do about it. And we automatically resort to our default, which is we need to fight. And God is saying the default needs to be, come to me. We can rest easy knowing God will act on our behalf. Resting comes by our faith in God. The more you allow God to work with you through pain, the more faith you have. And the more faith you have, the more you will instantly go to him when you're in trouble. Struggles and trials are allowed by God for our ultimate good. Ultimately, when we go through pain, it is a good thing. It's hard for us to think that through in this life, but eventually we'll realize as we see through the perspective of heaven, this was actually something God was doing that was good. We read about it in the New Testament. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to what? Grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing what? Nothing. All the peace you need is there. Heard about this. I've never seen it. Have any of you been to the Yukon up in Alaska? There's a fort there called Fort Watson Lake. And in the 1940s, in 1942, there was a soldier at the fort, and he was recovering from his injuries. And as he was recuperating, they said, hey, the signpost outside the barracks got knocked down. Could you go and repair it? A bulldozer knocked it down. The signpost basically was what it was. It had little signs on it that said, if you want to go to the mess hall that way, if you want to go to there that way. And as he's repairing it, he thought, I'm going to put another sign on it. So he put another sign on it. It said, if you want to get to Danville, Illinois, which is his hometown, he had the arrow pointing to the west or to the east, and then the mileage on it, some thousands of miles away. Well, shortly after that, other signposts started to appear. And by 2021, over 80,000 signposts were there. Here's a picture of it. You can actually go, and here's another picture of it. You can walk down lanes of signposts. Some 80,000. That was in 2021. It's now a tourist attraction. People go there, and all these signposts, they have license plates up there and advertisements, old advertisements and stuff, but signposts to everybody's hometown is all there, and people can put their sign up there if they want. What's great about signposts? Well, it tells you two things. One is where you're going and how to get there. It's a great thing, isn't it? It reminds you of what's to come. Folks, if I could tell you something, I just want you to know that Psalm 17 is your signpost. God is watching everything that happens to you. He will make it all right. He will do everything to vindicate you, to protect you, and rescue you. And the last verse of Psalm 17 points us. It's the signpost that points us to heaven. One day, all our struggles will be over because our enemies will be defeated and we will be with God. I hope that you use Psalm 17 in your life. I hope that you put a note somewhere that you can remember when you're in the throes of anger because someone has done you wrong, especially for your faith, that you come and realize you can be honest and open with God. And tell God all the things you're feeling. You might as well say those to him. He knows what you're thinking anyway. But when you do that, you allow the peace of God to come in. When you refuse to say, I'm angry and I want justice. And when you don't give that to God, you don't receive peace. When you are real with him, God will be real with you. And then he will remind you, and this is what you are to do. You are to say in faith, yes, Father, you will take care of it. Vengeance is yours. You will repay, and I will be with you forever. Father in heaven, we thank you. This is a feel-good psalm in some ways, Father, but it's also extremely important for us to have in our life, in our toolbox, as we face issues and instances of unfairness, of pain, of ones who would come to hurt for no other reasons than they can. So would you bless us, Father, with knowing your word and employing it in our lives. We thank you for this psalm. We thank you for the realness of it. We thank you that you are listening. In Jesus' name, amen.